Good morning and welcome to Shades in Justice. We are so excited to have you a part of this program on today. We have a very special guest with us today, and her name is Miss Candice Alcaraz, and she's running for district judge here in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. Now, what is so different about Miss Candice Alcaraz is that she is a woman of color running to be district judge. So, okay, now you got me so excited I can hardly stand it. We're going to introduce her in just a second. I want to just say that you are listening to Shades in Justice, and my name is Dr. Evelyn Hill. You could always reach me on our website, www.drevelynhill.net. All right, now we're going to get started on this morning with our special guest, Miss Candice. So, Candice, wow, I'm impressed. I am excited. And I can't hardly stand my own self being able to introduce you as my special guest on today. If you don't mind, first of all, may I say congratulations to you for taking this step in actually going to the election office and applying for this position and running. So first of all, a big congratulations to you.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. And then secondly, please tell us a little bit about your journey on how you got here today. Thank you.
Well, it's an interesting story. So yes, my name is Candice Alcaraz, and I'm a prosecutor here in Wyandotte County. I work at the DA's office. I've been working there for about 6 years. I will say I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and I did my undergrad at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri. Now, Kirksville was just, it's pretty much like a college and farm town, and the best things we had going were the 24-hour pancake house and 24-hour Walmart. So when it came time to pick a law school, I got into multiple, but it came down to a decision between two. One was in Topeka, Kansas, and the other one was in Indiana. So going back to Indiana would definitely put me closer to my family, but being at Truman kind of showed me I could be successful away from home, and that no matter where I go, I can still do what I need to do and go forth. So my mom called me. She said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, Mom, I'm going back and forth." And she said, "Well, we can get you an apartment and we can come and visit. You'll only be an hour away." And I said, "Yeah, that's going to be tough because I'll be at Washburn in Topeka. So it's a little more than an hour." So then I went to Washburn, and it was definitely an amazing experience. I will say my undergrad and my law school were both smaller settings, and that worked very well for me because I wasn't treated like just another student. I wasn't treated like another number. I was treated like a person, and the teachers were readily available to help me. And so it brought me to finishing up law school and taking the bar exam back in 2016. And the bar is, it is a different type of beast. But I passed the bar on the first attempt, and that was all that mattered to me. And then I got my job at the DA's office, and I've been there ever since. So, yeah.
What an amazing journey. So as a little girl, did your parents encourage you to go into law? Was it something you saw on TV or?
Oh, no. So I would say when I was young, I actually wanted to be a pediatrician.
Oh.
And I knew that was what I was going to do. I always knew I was going to go to college, even though neither of my parents went to college. None of my siblings went. So I knew I'll be the first one. That's fine. I'll take that on. So I always knew that that's what I was going to do. So I figured in school, I just did what my parents told me to do. They said, do your best work, try to get good grades, be involved. And I did that middle school, high school, college, law school, and I'm still doing it today because that's all that I know. So when I was in college, though, my freshman year, I was pre-med. I took a
Mhm.
science class and it totally derailed the pre-med dream. It was not working out. So I had to really do some soul searching over the next 3 years while I was in college. And it was a chance encounter with my teacher. She was the head of the justice systems, which is just a fancy way of saying criminal justice.
Uh-huh.
She was the head of my major. And at the end of my junior year, she sat me down. She said, "What are you going to do with yourself?" And I said, "I don't know. I might go to the FBI or something. I really don't know." And she said, "You should think about law school."
Wow.
And I said, "Listen, going to college, that was, I was okay with being the first to do that. That was fine. That seemed like an achievable goal. But
Uh-huh.
law school at the time, I came up with every excuse possible not to go. I said, listen, I'm a minority. I don't really know anybody that's done that. I don't know anybody I could reach out to show me that we can do this, that is possible. I mean, you see people on TV like Johnny Cochran and everything, but I didn't know
Yes.
anybody personally. So I thought, that's just not for me. I told her I'm a woman. Women don't really go into that. Like anything I could
Wow.
say to
Yes.
not have to put myself through that, I was coming up with it. But
Uh-huh.
the Lord moves in mysterious ways because she planted a seed that day. So in the summer,
Wow.
I interned for a judge back home, and lo and behold, he was a Black judge, and his next door neighbor was a Black female judge. And I said, "Oh my God, this is possible. Like, this is
That,
something I can do." And
yes.
so
Yes.
the seed was planted, and I went forth from there. So yeah, it was, if I never had that conversation with that teacher, I probably wouldn't be here today.
That is absolutely amazing. And like you said, the circumstances of
Yeah.
you interning for a Black male judge who lived next door to a Black female judge, that is the hand of God. I mean, we see that all over the place in your story. So
Yeah.
that is an amazing abruption to your plan and an introduction to God's plan for your life. So, wow, thank you
Definitely.
for that.
Definitely. He changed everything. And every step of the way, it was like, I don't know how many times we're going to go through this. I feel like the Lord
Uh-huh,
was telling me, you're going to do what I tell you to do, even though you don't want to. Like, there's a plan. There's something I have in
uh-huh,
store for you. So even
mhm,
deciding to run for judge, when I first got to the courthouse, I walked the hallways. There's a third floor in the courthouse that has all
uh-huh.
of the judges' pictures lined up. And that very first day I looked up there and I said, wow, they've never had a Black female judge. And it was just something that I set in the back of my mind. And I said, I'll come back to that eventually. Let's wait a couple of years. We'll discuss it then. And lo and behold, little by little, as I began to go through my career, people started asking me, when are you going to run? uh, what are you going to do about this? Are you going to take that step? And I kept thinking, how do these people know these things? Because it was people I didn't even know personally. So they were bringing
Wow.
this to me, and I was just like, is it written on my forehead or something? Like, how do these people know that this is what I'm planning to do? But again, the
Mhm.
Lord speaks. And
Yeah.
sure enough, I was like, okay, I was looking for a sign, and he sent me multiple. So yep, I began to plan this out in my head. I said, okay, I need to go further in my career. I need to get more experience with different types of cases, because I
Mhm.
definitely would not have taken this on if I felt like I wasn't ready or I wasn't prepared. That
Okay.
was my biggest thing, was that I do not just jump out there and do things half in, half out. No, I want to be able to say I'm ready and I can do
Mhm.
this.
Okay.
So,
That's good. Wow, I'm thankful for the seed being planted and then for the watering that came
yeah.
about through different people asking you that you
Didn't even
didn't
know
even
me
know.
like that.
Yeah,
Yes, it was weird. I was like, oh my gosh.
this is an amazing story. So since you have worked with the district attorney's office now for several years, can you describe what you bring to the table as a judge? Many of us here in Wyandotte County know the district attorney, Mr. Mark Dupree.
Mhm.
He wears many hats in the community,
Many.
and you've had an opportunity to kind of be under his tutelage maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Just what do you bring different to the table as a female African-American judge?
Well, I would say what I bring that's a little different is just a different philosophy, a different take on how we can do business.
Mhm,
I will say when I first started in my career, I started in the juvenile offender unit. And
mhm,
what I loved about it the most was that you could get so much information that as a prosecutor, I can take into account all of these things. And there's programming, there's services, there's all these options available. And I
mhm,
loved it because it helped me to make very good decisions on my cases. But when I switched over to adult prosecution, there was none of that.
mhm,
You get a piece of paper and it tells you this is the crime, this is a person's criminal history, make a choice. And I just thought, wow, there has got to be a better way to do
mhm,
this. So even with
mhm,
my own cases, I would tell attorneys, listen, if you can get me any information, tell me about your client. What do I need to know? What's not just in these papers in front of me? Because everybody has a story, everybody has something
mhm,
going on. And
mhm,
so I believe in truly sussing that out. I want to know what's just not in front of me on the paper, because that
mhm,
will help me to make a better decision so that somebody doesn't end up back in front of me within 6 to 12 months. I
mhm,
bring a community oriented approach. I would say I hate when people say we don't have a lot to offer in Wyandotte County. We do. We have multiple programs, resources, organizations that people can use, but either people just don't know about them or it's just
mhm,
not talked about unless you're in a certain section of the community. And I want to bring it full force.
mhm,
That's why I've made myself available to go around and learn about different organizations, what different services we have, so that when someone comes in front of me and they say that they're struggling with homelessness, they're struggling with keeping a job, they're struggling with
mhm,
drugs, mental health, all these different things, I can say, okay, here's an option, here's a service that you can use, or here is a plan that we can put in place so that you can be the best you that you need to be. And then that will help us be the best community that we can be.
mhm,
So that's, yeah, I just think we can do it differently. I think we should
mhm,
take a more hands-on approach on the front end, as
mhm,
opposed to waiting until people have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 crimes on their record, and everything that they do now is probably going to send them to prison. So now we want to get the services in place. No, I want to do that on the front end. And
mhm,
it's a tough task. It's tough to ask those questions, but it's easy to just say, go do your time, pee in a cup, be good for 12 months, and that's it. But that
mhm,
doesn't address the issue of how you got into this situation in the first place. Now, for some people, it's easier. For some people, it's not. But it has to be something that we implement across the board. And so that's kind of what I want to do. I want to just approach it differently, listen to
mhm,
people, find a community program or resource that can help this person with the situation that they're in. Now,
mhm,
everybody's not going to end up in the community. Some people are going to have to go to prison. But if I'm weighing whether or not to put somebody in the community or to put them in prison, I want to know all of the options. I
mhm,
don't want to just say, well, this was the crime, this is your history, that's it. No, that's not it. There's more
mhm,
to it. And
mhm,
so that's the different approach that I want to bring to the bench.
mhm. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that you have put a lot of thought into that. And I love the fact that you want the community resources known up front so that if there is a way that this individual can be helped on the front end, there is that option and you're willing to at least listen and come up maybe with an alternative. So
Yes.
that's pretty exciting because I think down through the years, especially for people of color, um, what has happened is if there is something that has happened that could be addressed through a community resource, like you said, either the judges don't know about it or don't make it an option. They just, okay,
Yeah.
they just hit the gavel and you're in prison. So,
Yep.
uh,
And
and
that's
like you
that's
said, you're not trying to get it. If they deserve a prison term, you understand that. You're not trying to eliminate
right.
that. But if there's a window where you're able to provide that resource to that individual, thank you for just sharing that. I think important and it is a different perspective. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, and that community piece is so important because it's in Wyandotte County, we kind of have this issue of everybody's in their own little silo, in their own little section of the county, and we don't really reach out beyond that. And so if we did that more often, it would be amazing the amount of help that we could get people and just pushing our county forward. And so that's a different thing that I want to do too. I like to be very much involved. I mean, I'm in legal organizations, I'm in community organizations, but if I'm successful in this campaign, I'm going to have to be even more involved because people are going to expect, based on what I'm running on, that I have to have that information. And so I have to take it upon myself to make myself aware. I have to want to do that for the sake of the job, to make myself aware, to make myself present so people know, okay, that judge, she's actually going to weigh everything. She's going to look at a plan. She's going to make sure that to the best of her abilities, when she makes a decision, it is the most just and sound decision that can be made based on everything that's available to her.
That's good. And I can appreciate the fact that you, as a judge, and even now, you are getting more and more into the community, and you realize that even after, should the you be the winner, which is what we would hope, that you would still continue to be out in the community. And that would be a change. I've seen a few judges out in the community, but not that many. So that would be a nice change also.
Oh, yes. I want the people to know me. I want them to not just see me as somebody that's sitting in judgment of them all the time. I want them to see me out here invested in my community, helping to make it better, not just handing down decisions, but also doing some community service, letting the people see you. Who are you, this person that is judging them? What are you about? What are, what is your personal attributes? What are the things that make you tick? What are your feelings, your emotions? These are things you want to know about the people who are making these decisions that are so important to the community. Like you don't know it, but the decisions that they make on the bench affect your everyday life because it affects everyone around you and what is happening in the community.
Okay. All right. So I know that you have been a part of several high-profile cases in our county. What is the one thing that is consistent with you as a prosecutor in the courtroom?
I would say the one thing that's very consistent about me is the way that I approach each case. When I sit down and look at a case, I look at it with this attitude: is what I'm doing is very important, and it's going to affect someone's life for better or for worse. And so I have to be very careful in the work that I am doing. That's one of the first things I train people on, that they do send to me when they come to the office. I tell them, more than likely, the judge is going to side with you on the options that you present to the court. So you have to be very careful with that power. You have to be very careful with it. And so I take special care in every case that I have because, like I said, what I do is going to affect somebody somehow. And I don't want it to be a situation where people are just like, well, she just makes brash decisions. She doesn't think it out. No, I do. I sit down with every single case. I go through the facts. I go through the criminal history. By the time I'm done doing that, going through discovery, probably I've talked to the defense attorney about, okay, what's going on with your client? What are we talking about in terms of options? And I take that approach to every case. You have to be careful with what you're doing because the system is depending on you just as much as it's depending on the judge to make the right outcome. But as a prosecutor, we're really depending on you to make sure that justice is being done. And so I take special care in my work, knowing that I have that power, that it can be wielded in many different ways. And so you have to be very, very careful with it. And sometimes I'm more careful with people and clients than their own attorneys. It just happens. It's a part of the job. Now, will I say that I'm perfect? No, nobody is perfect. I am pretty sure that maybe
That's
there
right.
are people that are
Uh-huh.
like, well, with my case, she did this and this. And that is true. Not every case is going to go perfectly to plan. Nothing goes exactly as the way I would want it or
Uh-huh.
exactly as the way the defense would want it. But what I can say is that I have made it my practice to take special care in making decisions, making certain offers, and deciding whether or not to go to trial. Because at the end of the day, I know the specific role that I play as a prosecutor, and it is one that is essential, but also very dangerous if you do not do it the right way.
Mhm. You mentioned just a few minutes ago that sometimes you get more details on the case than the attorney actually offered. And I think I said that relatively correct. Um, but I am just always amazed at the fact when I look at some of the high profile cases on television that,
Mhm.
and I'm not talking about CSI, I'm talking about real
Real
cases
cases, yeah.
that happened, like the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Mhm.
His case, the prosecutor was so detailed, did a real creative way of bringing some uh, meat to the table that embellished the law at the same time as bringing truth to what had been um, misappropriated
Mhm.
through media. And so that can be kind of a sticky subject. So I just wonder, when you're talking about being a prosecutor and being very careful, um, how do you look for ways to be creative in bringing the truth, or is it just a blanket kind of a rubber stamp way that you
Oh no.
bring things? Okay, all right,
Oh,
good.
definitely not. So every case is different. No
Mhm.
two cases are alike. So you have to take into account all of the facts as they are presented. And sometimes there are things that we're going to know that the public is not going to know. Of the high profile cases that I have worked, I have to listen to people say just outlandish things that I'm like, that's not true. That didn't happen that way. But because of how we're bound in our job with ethical duties, I can't just go out on Facebook and say, well, actually, this is what was going on,
Mhm.
because then I would be in trouble. But what I will say is for every case, you try to find a unique way to present the story. So if it's a case that's going to end up going to trial, for every single trial that I have, it's a different strategy because
Okay.
the evidence is different for each trial. There are some cases where the evidence is so strong that I don't have to lay it on as thick. And then there are some cases where I've got to make it make sense. I have to put it together the way that I understand it, and then make sure that when I'm presenting it to the public, they understand it as well. So it
Mhm.
really just depends on what your evidence is, what you're trying to convey, but it does change from case to case. You have to have a different strategy. You can't bring the same thing over and over again because not every way that you go about a case will fit for each particular case. Like the way I handle sex cases and murders is a little different than the way I handle burglaries, robberies, aggravated batteries. There's different things that I may say in jury selection or just different approaches to it, just given the nature of the conduct or the crime. It
Mhm.
truly just depends, but it does change depending upon what's in front of me. You can't just rubber stamp it. You have to have a different playbook for each kind of thing in the law. So yes, you change it up here and there to fit what you need to tell the story and to
Okay.
make sure that it's accurate. Especially as prosecutors, we're defending the law.
Mhm.
So we have to make sure that we know it ourselves and that it's accurate. And when we're presenting the evidence, that we are going along with what's the law. Because if it's not, the case can get dismissed, or the jury can say, well, we were confused, we didn't really understand it. And then somebody is going to be set free. They're going to be found to be innocent just because
Mhm.
maybe they didn't understand what you were saying. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, you have to change it up depending upon the circumstances of
Okay.
the case.
With child abuse cases,
Mhm.
what do you look for?
Well, with child abuse cases, I'm trying to find out, what do we have to really prove that the person we've charged with doing this child abuse was actually doing it? What kind of
Mhm,
evidence do we have? Do we have videos? Do we have, is it just people saying that they saw these things, just lay witnesses? So I'm trying to see just how much proof we have that these things occurred, whether that be from the child themselves or the people around. I want to know if DCF was involved with this family at some point in time, or were there any sort of contacts that were made with the child? Are there other people living in the house? What they know about this? Were there people coming by the house or wherever
mhm,
it may take place that were witnesses to this? Because when you say child abuse, you're gonna have to show up and say, hey, this happened, and these are the
mhm,
people that can speak to that, or these are the photos, or these are the videos. And so for child abuse cases, you really want to make sure you're bringing forth all of the evidence you possibly can, because it's hard. It's hard to tell
mhm,
people, this one mark from this particular day was child abuse or a result of child abuse. The
mhm,
jury is going to want all the details, anything that they can, take in and understand about it, because it's a hard thing to prove.
mhm. I can really appreciate you saying that with child abuse, it's a hard thing to prove. I think on several high-profile cases here in Wyandotte County, um, we've seen some things happen, and one of the things I always wondered, both with DCF and with the prosecutor and the attorneys, if families can pretend like they are this happy family and there is nothing wrong going on in the family, when in fact there really is some abuse going on. I just wonder, how do you work through all of that? That they can, people can be very deceiving, and
Yes,
in the end, the child is the one who
who
hurts. So,
suffers. Yep.
yeah.
Well, I can say definitely people will play games with the system to the best of their abilities. When I was doing juvenile offender work, some of that would have to cross into child in need of care cases. So those are children that are involved in the system because of abuse or neglect of some sort. And
Mhm,
so, yes, people will play games. They can
mhm.
definitely, when DCF shows up, can put on a great face, but then that's
Yes.
why we, as people who either are involved directly in a situation with the child where we see something is not right or something is off, it just seems like, this shouldn't be happening, or we
Mhm,
see marks and bruises maybe on a child, or maybe they're acting in a certain way that they shouldn't be. It's on us, the people who are around that child or who are
mhm,
seeing these things, to step up and say something, because you're right. If it's in-house,
mhm,
probably, people can sell a pretty good story. But what I tend to find is that with child abuse cases, there have been multiple people that have seen many things. And then by the time we file a case, then they come out and say, well, I did see some things that were weird or concerning. And maybe
mhm.
had they said something ahead of time, we wouldn't be where we are now. And
Right,
so
right.
I would say, yeah, people can definitely, you know, say some things and make some things appear to be what they're not. But
Mhm,
what we always tend to find, at least in all of my child abuse cases, is that there were multiple people who knew things were happening. And up until the point now where it's in front of me, where it's either a dire situation or worse,
mm,
now they're coming forward to say, hey, this is what I saw.
right. Yes.
When if we could do that on the front end, even if you just think, it's not my place, or maybe it's not as bad as I think it is, still report it, say something, do
Mhm,
something, because if it turns out that it's not true, fine, that's great. But what if it turns out that it was true and that you could have prevented certain other things happening to that child?
mm,
So I would say as a community, we just have to do better with stepping up and saying something. And they do have anonymous hotlines where you can call in
mhm,
and say, this is
mhm,
something that I saw. I just want to report it. I mean, you could even do that with the police department, and it will
mhm,
find its way to the right people. But we have to say something when we
mhm,
see things that are not right. Even if you, like I said, even if you feel like you don't want to get involved,
mhm,
you don't want to get yourself in the middle of this, but then when it's too late or when something really bad happens, then you're going to feel even worse because you may have been a stopper to that early on.
Mhm. Thank you for saying that. I did a podcast not too long ago about what is our responsibility to the children in our community. And we do have to speak up. There is a Proverbs chapter 31, verses 8 and 9 that says, speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. The little kids
Yeah.
can't speak for themselves. So it is up to us, the adults in the community. And like you said, we have to put aside all the other nonsense that goes on in our head, like, I'm not really trying to get involved. I just don't want the baby hurt. And so we do have to do that hotline thing, and we can be anonymous. Thank you so much for saying that. That's part of our responsibility as the village.
Yes.
That's part of our responsibility as the community to help see about our kids.
Yes.
So, Miss Candice, I'm gonna switch gears here a little bit. How do you handle stress and the workload of an attorney / prosecutor? You do that.
My goodness. Well, I can say when I started my job, one of the cases that was going on at the time, and I will say, I probably should have said this at the very beginning. Everything that I am saying today is the opinion of Candice Alcaraz. It is not that of the district attorney or the district attorney's office. But I will say, when I started, the Adrian Jones case was going on. And my father, he became very invested in what's happening in Kansas City, Kansas, because now his baby girl lives and works there. And so he sent me an article and he said, you know, are you really ready to handle things like this and cases like this? Are you sure that this is the path that you want to go down? Because this seems like a lot. It seems like a lot to, you know, weigh on a person. And I just said, Dad, I'm here. You know, I haven't reached that level yet, but I'm learning and I'm growing with it. So for now, I'm going to stick with it. And then sure enough, as time would go on, I got on the pagers for my job. And I would get called out to crime scenes, to murder scenes. And I tell you, I've seen some horrible things out there, but it's how I feel in that moment that lets me know I was meant to do this, that I am capable and I am able, because it didn't really break me down. It didn't really make me want to quit. It just made me want to go harder and seek justice for the situations I was seeing. So to relieve my stress from all that, though, I will say outside of the office, I'm like a big kid. I'm not gonna lie. I exercise a lot. I will say that. I love taking long walks. That really helps me to decompress. I love music. I listen to music daily at all times of the day if I could. That really settles me down. I'm a Netflix girl and I am a gamer. I will get on there and I'll just, you know, going away at it. I like skating as well. And then talking to my coworkers, because we're all working this very stressful job. So a lot of times we'll sit around and we'll just talk about our cases and how to keep each other going. And, you know, if you feel that this is a bit much or you need to talk to someone further about it, we encourage each other to do that so that we don't get burned out and that we're not, you know, taking this home with us every day. So I guess to end with this question, I will say one of the things my supervisor has always told me was that you can't take this personal. And when you go home, you have to go home. You have to leave it here in the office or else you will burn out very quickly. So that's what I do. When I'm off the clock, you know, I try to have a good time. I try to enjoy myself. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. I like that. The skating and the music. I thought you was going to say singing, and you did say
I do
dancing.
sing, but I sing in my house. I used to be in the choir when I was younger in church. And yeah, I messed up one time. I let somebody hear me singing outside of my house. And they were like, oh, you're going to be in the choir. And I said, oh, man. So no, I am retired from singing publicly. I sing in my house. I play an instrument. I play the flute. So I play my flute in my house as well. But that's it. I don't perform outside of the house.
Well, I have just seen over the years Ben Crump and how he has had so many civil rights cases around the
Mhm.
country. And I recently saw something on Netflix with Mr. Crump and some of these cases like Breonna Taylor case and Trayvon Martin and so many more. And
Mhm.
I just have a question for you. Number one, have we had or have you had to deal with any civil rights cases here in Wyandotte County? And then number two, what would make those cases more of a challenge, or would they be more of a challenge?
Well, I would say the civil cases are in a different ballpark. So
Okay.
for the DA's office, we handle criminal cases. There are a few small civil matters that we deal with, but nothing to that extent.
Mhm,
So, and civil and criminal have two different standards.
mhm,
For criminal, it's the highest in the land. It's beyond a
mhm,
reasonable doubt. But when you're talking about civil, it's the preponderance of the evidence. So it's a little less, but they're totally different games, I would say. They're
mhm.
totally different games.
So
So,
it's, go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. No.
So I guess the reason for this line of questioning, listen to me, uh, about civil rights is those cases, the police actually killed the individual, not the police with Trayvon Martin. It was a wannabe
Yeah.
police guy, but with Breonna Taylor, it absolutely was the
Mhm.
police that killed her, and so that was part of the challenge. The same with George Floyd, and I know you said it's different with the civil cases versus criminal. So
Yes.
how do you marry those two, and why do we call that civil rights? I'm just help me with that.
Well, we call it civil rights probably because it's on the civil side and
Okay.
it's dealing with more of a like how people treat you because of the situation that you're in or who you
Mhm,
are or your particular background. And
mhm,
what makes it particularly tough when we're talking about cases involving law enforcement is because law enforcement has certain rules and protocols that they have to go by. And
mhm,
so,
mhm,
in bringing those kind of cases, you're going up against that. So, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what did an officer feel or think in a situation because it
mhm,
does happen so quick. I will
mhm,
say, a lot of times people don't think about how fast a situation can escalate or when
mhm,
things happen and people's minds are going, a million times, a million seconds, a million times a second.
mhm,
And you're making quick split second decisions based on
mhm,
what you've been trained to do and the rules and protocols that you've learned and adopted as a part of your job. So when
mhm,
it comes to those kind of cases, that's exactly what makes it so tough because you have to go by or you're going up against what did this person see, feel, think in this moment as
mhm,
it was occurring. Because
mhm.
we as the public, we're catching up after the fact. So
Right,
we're watching
right.
videos on Facebook and
Yes.
Instagram and Twitter, and we're trying to do play by play. But I think
Mhm,
sometimes we forget that this is right in the moment as it's
mhm,
happening. And so that is what people are going up against in terms of the civil rights side or anything involving civil cases and law enforcement.
mhm.
So that's what makes it particularly tough.
Okay. And I would assume it's tough also because like with the unified government, the district attorney's office, the police department, the fire department, all of them are under the unified government of Wyandotte County. So the attorneys are and the prosecutor are all under that umbrella. So it
To an extent,
seems
yes. But
okay.
if something were to happen, like we can always ask, and this is kind of more of a mark
Yeah.
call, but we can have the attorney general's office step in to handle something if need be. Like there are many different mechanisms for dealing with particular situations that come across our desk involving people that are in law enforcement or the
Mhm.
fire department or, city hall, government, things of that nature. So there's different paths that have to be
Okay.
taken, different people that deal with different things. So but without going further into that, because Mark would know that more clearly than I would. But I just
Okay.
know that if we have certain situations, we bring them to him and they go down the paths that they need to go down so that it's handled appropriately.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I know that was a tough question. I was reaching
No,
and digging a little deep. So
no, you're fine. And it's good that people know kind of what we're looking at, what we're
yes.
addressing, what we're going up against,
Mhm.
and what are standards, what are the things that are being considered. Because a lot of times we as the public, and I will admit, before I was an attorney, there were so many things that I thought, and now that I'm in the law, I
Mhm.
know the law, I'm just like, oh my gosh, wow. Like there are so many things I had wrong in my mind,
Yes.
just completely
Yes.
wrong. And what we
Mhm.
see on
Mhm.
TV is not always reality.
Right.
And
Right.
especially for a prosecutor, we know things that just, you'd be amazed if I could just sit here and spill
Mhm.
my guts on all the cases I've had, the things that just the public doesn't know,
Right.
or like thinking about why we made certain decisions, why we took
Yes.
certain action. There are
Mhm.
things that happen that we can't discuss publicly because either they don't come out since the case doesn't go to trial, or they're protected. It's protected information, and we would get in trouble if we were to release it. So,
Right.
but I would say do your research. It's always good to do your research, look through things. I know we do a lot of investigations when it comes to like videos, but also look at the law for that particular state.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, what we consider to be a certain type of murder in our state is not considered to be a certain type of murder in another state, or what the punishments are. Every state is different. The federal level is different. So I encourage people, yes, do your homework, do your research so that you can understand better what is happening and going on in the world around you.
Okay. Thank you. When O.J. Simpson had his very famous trial back in the 90s, I think,
Mhm.
he had a group of attorneys around him that the world considered the dream team. Do
Yeah.
we have anything like that here in Wyandotte County?
No, and I would say I've not ever had a case where I've dealt with more than one attorney on the case.
Okay.
Pretty much here, it's just one to one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say what's similar is that you'll have multiple different other people involved. Like you'll have
Mm-hmm.
specialists, you'll have people that have tested things, you'll have pathologists, you'll have competing experts, all of those things come into play. But as far as seeing like a dream team showing up to counsel's table for a criminal case, I haven't seen it. Well, I will say I had one case that involved some different layers to it, but it was still just one attorney that I
Okay.
was dealing with. So no, we
Okay.
don't typically have that. But for civil, now civil, I will say there are some dream teams for that because the playing field is just, it's much greater. There's a lot more going on. So like when we had
Oh,
the Schlitterbomb situation going on, that was a team of lawyers on both
wow.
sides.
Okay.
So you'll see it there, but no, we don't normally see it for our criminal cases here in Wyandotte.
Okay. And I got a couple questions just as a citizen.
Yeah.
What happens when the juror's decision is different from the judge?
Well, if we went to jury trial, and this is
Yes.
another kind of learning moment. So
Yes.
there are two types of trials we can have on the criminal level. You can
Mm-hmm.
have a bench trial, which means that it's just the judge is making the decision.
Okay.
Or you can have a jury trial where the 12 people in the box are making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the 12 people in the box decide something different than the judge, it doesn't matter because the judges, I mean, not the judges, the jury's decision is going to trump. They are
Okay.
the ones that made the call. So if they find a person guilty or innocent, they found them guilty or innocent. The judge
Okay.
can't do anything about it unless, on appeal, there was something going on during that case or it comes back. But yes, if the
Mm-hmm.
jury has been summoned and called and they make a decision, it's a unanimous
Mm-hmm.
decision. That's it. That's all she wrote.
Okay. And we basically knew that, but sometimes I think we in the community just need a rehearsal kind of over what justice really looks like. Because
Oh
I
yeah.
know myself personally, I've seen some cases and it's It's like, couldn't the judge overturn that? But no,
No.
that is how our country runs. That is
Yep.
what justice looks like here in America. Correct.
Yep. When the jury decides,
Mhm.
they make the decision. You can't go back. You can't undo it. Like I said, unless there's some sort of appeal that's going to come for something crazy happening during the case. But when they make a decision and it's a unanimous decision, that's it. So,
Okay. Now, please describe the power of the judge.
so you said,
Okay.
what was the role of the judge and how does that pretty much impact the system?
Yes, that'll work.
Okay. So a lot of times people, oh, and now it's back again. Okay, good. So a lot of times people think that prosecutors are the ones that are sending people to jail or making the decisions, and we're not. It's the judge. The judge, though, holds the final power as to a decision. They can decide whether or not to accept a plea. They can decide whether or not to follow a plea agreement. They decide what punishment will be handed down within the law, because in Kansas, we have a sentencing grid that dictates the numbers and whether somebody is presumptive prison or presumptive probation. But the judge is the one that makes that call. And so as a community, you have to be aware that, it's not us. The attorneys, we are small change. Like, we are just advocating to the court what decisions we want to be made. But at the end of the day, it is the judge who makes the decision and bangs the gavel. So that is why what they do is so important, because they have the final say, unless it's a jury trial.
Yes. Okay. And talk a little bit about the bail. I am learning more and more about the bail. The judge sets the bail. Is there a grid nationwide where a person commits a certain kind of crime, they have to serve a certain amount of time or whatever? Is there anything like that, or is that, again, just according to each state?
It's definitely according to each state. It's according to each courtroom. I will say here in Wyandotte, we don't have, or at least to our knowledge as an attorney, as a prosecutor, I don't know of a special grid or anything that the judges may use. Now, each particular judge may have their own set of standards that they follow when they're setting a bond, but it is purely that judge's decision. So the way this happens is, say someone gets arrested, they get taken to jail. A detective is going to submit an affidavit to the DA's office. We're going to review that affidavit, going to see if there's anything that we can charge, and we're going to make a charging document. Within that charging document, there will be a warrant. So we're going to give the judge the affidavit and the charging documents with the warrant in it. At that point, the judge may ask us, what do you think the number should be? Because for certain cases, we do have a certain number in mind. But again, we are just advocating. The judge is the one who decides what number goes on that line. So yeah, some of them, they probably do have their own, cheat sheet about what they want to use in terms of numbers for particular cases. But yes, at the end of the day, they sign the paper, they put the number on there. Sometimes they ask us, sometimes they don't. But that's well within their right. They're the judge. So we don't tell them, I want this for sure, and you better give it to me. I've never in my life told the judge that. I have just said, this is the number we would like. If we can get that number, great, but you hold the cards, you make the decision. So each particular judge in this jurisdiction makes the decision on what the bond amount will be, and if there's even enough probable cause for this warrant to be issued. Yep.
I see. And then is there, I'm not sure how to ask this question. If say the individual is able to bond out, either with their own personal finances or with the help of an agency or somebody else, are there times when the judge can say, no, I'm not accepting the funds to bail you out?
Okay, so the judge doesn't make that decision on what gets accepted for bond.
Okay,
That decision comes down to the jail.
I got you.
So they are the ones that determine whether or not what you're coming up there with is going to be accepted or who's coming to get you. Specifically, I would say when it comes to particular companies, you have to be recognized by the court, and to an extent, I want to say it's the sheriff's office since they run the jail.
Okay,
Have to be recognized by them as a reputable company for bonding. And so,
okay,
because there are some bond companies that we know for sure, when we see their names come across the paperwork, we're like, okay, I'm familiar with them. So yes, that is something that is between the sheriff's department and I believe probably the chief judge. If that's somebody that you want to speak to about it, that's who you would go to figure out how to get a company to be reputable for bonding purposes,
okay.
because it
So,
comes down to them. We don't have anything to do with it as the DA's office, and no
okay,
individual judge can say, we're not going to accept this, because they don't run the jail. They just set the bonds.
okay. See, this is great information. Great information. Thank you for that. Here in America, the percentages are extremely low comparatively for female judges.
Mhm.
So why do you think that is? And just what are some of your comments in regards to that?
Well, I think the reason that we probably have lower amounts, although here in Wyandotte County, we have a nice amount of female judges, but I would say it's probably for some of those same reasons I listed earlier when I was telling my teacher I didn't want to go to law school. It's because, there are different things at play. Depending upon where you are, how to get a judgeship may require you to either run for election like I'm doing, because in the state of Kansas, we only have two jurisdictions that do that. That's Wyandotte County and Sedgwick County. Everywhere else, it's through pretty much an appointment
Yeah.
situation.
Okay.
And so you have to, get in there. You have to meet and greet with people. You have to know people in order to climb that ladder. And so, in many instances, that takes a lot to try to break through that ceiling and be the one woman, or to have multiple women in a leadership role at a certain particular time. Now here in Wyandotte, I can say, like I said, we have multiple female judges. So it's not that it's affected us that greatly, but I will say for minorities, we do not have enough minority judges that represent our community as a whole. And especially minority women. We don't have that here as well, but it's because it's tough. I mean, even for me, when I came to the DA's office, the thing that I was told by my coworkers were, you're the first Black female attorney we've had in years. And even when I walked around the courthouse, I don't see minority attorneys, well, female attorneys walking around that are practicing. I just don't. And they may be doing stuff on the civil side, so maybe I don't see them there. But on the criminal side, it was just me for a long time. And then Mark started hiring other minority women in our office. And so now we have, let's see, it's myself and four other Black female attorneys in the office. And so I don't feel as alone.
Yeah.
So it's a different vibe. But yeah, I would say it's probably because it's so difficult to get up to that next level. It's hard to break through that glass ceiling. So I would say that's why it's a little more difficult for women. It's a tough task. It's a tough task.
Well, that's why I'm free about congratulating you and just thanking you for taking this walk of faith and just
It's definitely a walk of faith.
taking a deep breath and just doing it. You just out there doing it. And so I so appreciate your courage and want to encourage you. Now, I'd like for you to tell our listeners how to get in touch with you, how to reach you, what's your website, if you have any books out.
No, I got you. So Anyone can go on my campaign page. My Facebook campaign page is Candice for Judge. I also do have an email. It's candiceforwycojudge@gmail.com. I do have a phone number also associated with my campaign. I don't give out my personal number unless it's to people like Dr. Hill that I've known and met personally. But I do have a number for the campaign. It's 913-335-0590. Again, 913-335-0590. And some people have actually taken to finding me at the courthouse because they know that I'm there from 9 to 5. So, but please, I cannot do campaign business during business hours. So use one of those other platforms to get in contact with me, because I have had people call the office and we want to talk to the girl that's running for judge. And I'm like, that's a violation. We can't do that.
Right.
On company time. No. So please don't get me in trouble. Don't get yourself in trouble. Use one of those different ways to contact me. I would say the quickest is probably the Candice for Judge Facebook page, since everybody's always on social media. I know I keep my hand on it all day. So that would probably be the quickest way to get in contact me. Unless you can find somebody who has my personal number, then that works as well too. But I appreciate any support that anyone can offer. And Dr. Hill, I just thank you for talking with me. And, it's just like this nice mentorship that's growing here. I like it. I like talking with you. I like feeding off your energy and learning how to be in this situation and going forward as a Black woman in this sort of business and trying to be this, go to this next level. I appreciate all of the wisdom that you are pouring into me. So thank you.
Been a part of Shades in Justice, and we look forward to more conversations with the one and only Candice Alcaraz. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.